Afternoon all, I'd like to show you a very interesting game from the Chess Olympiad between two very strong GMs, Emil Sutovsky as white, playing for the Israel team, 2687, and Loek Van Wely, 2691, or it might be Van Wely, excuse the pronunciation. So e4 kicked off the game from Emil, and we saw the centre counter, the Scandinavian, and this is quite popular online actually. I like to play knight c3. So why is it so popular? It was actually condemned, I think, by Mieses as an example of an opening which lost a lot of time. The thing is, after e takes d, queen takes d5, white plays a move which maybe isn't that ideal, although it's gaining a tempo knight c3, and I think I mentioned this in a previous over the board video on this channel. It is blocking the c pawn, which means that if black sets up a structure like this later, say the bishop coming here or here with e6 played, usually in that structure white is aiming for d5, but with knight c3 inhibiting the d5 break, this loss of time here has basically got black a sort of trump card, that semi-open d-file pressure, without having that potential for white to play d5 as effectively. So it's an interesting opening, still popular, still very popular. I think the Australian Grandmaster Ian Rogers was a great exponent of it, maybe still is. So we see after d4, black plays initially knight f6, and after knight f3, c6, which is sort of putting the brakes on d5 and giving the queen an escape route back. Okay, bishop d2. At the moment, there isn't a major threat against the queen here. Apart from, knight e4, okay, but it's not a big deal in this position. So black plays bishop f5, and now we see an aggressive move, knight e5, which introduces a few possibilities, like bishop c4 attacking f7, maybe knight c4. It also, of course, frees the f pawn. So while the c pawn has been blocked in, the f pawn has been liberated potentially. But if the f pawn is moved, you might think this diagonal could be weakened. It's a bit risky to try and reinforce that knight, but the main idea, more common idea, is that the queen now has access to that g4 square, and the knight is also looking at g4, which means actually g4 is on the cards, and this is what makes knight e5, I think, quite popular. And in fact, we see after knight bd7 here, this g4, which gives the option to the bishop, of a fianchetto, as well as coming onto this diagonal. So it's making use of that advanced knight for the moment. Okay. Now here, it looks as though knight takes e5 might be a possibility. I don't think it's that hot. Possibly because g takes f5. Let's actually just quickly inspect that possibility. So knight takes e5. Yes, g takes f5, getting the bishop power really. We see this, there's no major, tactical threat here. So this sort of position should in theory favour white a little bit. The bishop pair, f5 is not such a bad problem, these double pawns. I think the bishop pair outweighs things here. So let's go back. So in the game, the bishop just humbly retreated back to e6, funny enough. Now to e6 instead of g6 is interesting, because you might think, well, bishop g6 is also possible, but there is always the move h4 trying to trap the bishop. Let's have a quick look at that actually as well. From a theoretical point of view, this game's quite interesting. Bishop g6. Now is h4 actually a move here? No, e5 is loose. E5 is loose. So f4 here. Now in this position, it looks as though white might be doing okay. Say this looks as though engine likes kind of white's position here, and let's go with this continuation. Now h4 does threaten h5. You can see white can get the squares covered up, the weaknesses covered up in this sort of variation, with h5 promising as well, and the promising space advantage. Also white has the e4 square, so it's a bit of an unusual decision maybe, this bishop e6. It looks less common than bishop g6. Okay, but it does give black some options, maybe against knight c4s, there's options to capture, Also, this diagonal might be interesting. Now, in the game, we see an unusual response actually here. It might not be so appropriate, this move, as with bishop g6, to play the move f4 here. Now, black, in this position, can do something quite interesting, which he does. He castles queenside, which seems to set up indirect pressure on that d file. White now plays queen f3, which looks like a natural move, preparing to castle queenside. You also might think there might be potential for threats like knight takes c6 at some point. Now here things get very interesting indeed. Black takes on e5, and it looks as though there might be more than one way of capturing here, but actually I don't think there is. It looks as though knight takes g4 is strong, or there might even be stronger here, but knight takes g4 looks like a free pawn. Let's make sure of that. Knight takes g4 isn't indeed a move here, and it looks as though there's no major tactical compensation. That's really what I wanted to check. So in the game, white is forced to take in this position with the d pawn, and there's a very, very interesting move played here. If I give you 10 seconds, I wonder if you can spot it. So 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, white is prevented from castling queenside with this very energetic move. Rook takes d2. And this is very annoying. Okay. Now, in the game, e takes f6 was played. It's actually quite unpalatable to take with the king here. The main tactical issue with this is check, which is not check, there'll be queen takes e4 there. Bishop d5, skewering the queen and the rook. So let's imagine the queen moving. And now the knight can get out of trouble with check, and then knight takes, and then the rook's still hanging. So this will be a total disaster for white. So really taking the king here is just asking for big trouble. It's introducing that pin. You can see this pin now for bishop d5 and the skewer. So we've got tactical reasons for disaster here. Loose pieces, skewering lines and pin pieces. Okay. Quite a number of tactical issues there being exposed. So white maybe is in shock already. He plays after rook takes d2, e takes f6, and we see now the rook just playing rook takes e2, so preventing white from casting queenside. Clearly it's illegal. Also threatening, of course, rook takes b2, undermining c3, and it just looks really, really a nasty position. White tries to develop to try and castle kingside here. I'm not sure how many other major choices there are. So we see bishop d3, and now rook takes b2, hitting c3. That's protected. And now black takes with the e pawn, so he's unleashing the bishop on this diagonal. White has no dark square bishop. It just shows the real cruelty of chess, that even a 2687 GM can have a disaster in the opening. I think I read a YouTube comment recently about some other disaster. Someone wasn't 2600, about 2300 against Adams, and how in this age of modern computer opening preparation, how can you have disasters? I think disasters are fairly easy to happen. People just try one or two interesting moves, maybe to surprise the opponent often. To put the opponent in an uncomfortable position, and sometimes that can backfire. So clearly things have quite badly backfired here. White castled now, and the situation is, okay, what is actually the situation? White's 2 pawns down, but you might think, well, hang on, you know, this c file might be dangerous. Okay, so black actually plays energetically with the queen on a5, leaving it there to support this move, h5. So a lot of pressure now on the g-pawn. Of course, white doesn't really want to allow hg in this blasting rook down the h5, tries to keep things closed with g5. But of course the queen's on g5 here, so it's losing another pawn, fg. And not only that, look at these diagonals. This potential threat of bishop c5 is really annoying for the king. So we see in this position knight d1, and actually bishop c5 being made use of. After king h1, this skewering diagonal looks really dangerous still. And okay, but the rook at the moment is attacked. Okay, so in this position, black played a simple move actually, not bishop d5, but actually g4, which I believe engines think is absolutely the strongest move, because actually with this g4, where does the queen go? It can't go there because the rook's on that. It can't go to e2. If it goes to g3, then that looks like a total disaster with bishop d5. Look at these raking bishops. It's an absolute disaster. And in fact, you know, queen e4 to get bishop d5. What does white do here after g4? He decided enough was enough actually. He resigned here. And with this win, the Netherlands beat Israel because they won on another board of the 4 boards. So it was a critical win. 2 fairly evenly matched teams in round 9, but quite a crunch, and maybe a showcase game for the centre counter for how dangerous it can be. You know, black's first move is really opening up that d file. Who would think the d file would support black casting queenside and an early rook takes d2 later on, as we saw in this game? It really shows how devastating openings can be if they're mishandled from the opponent. These you know, pressure trump cards can lead to tactical combinations. So we saw here a slightly surprising move here, which maybe disturbed white a bit, to play f4. I think other moves, calmer, maybe just taking on d7 or h3. But I think where it started to go wrong was f4. Let's just quickly see. In fact, the move f4, okay, knight c4 might be a little bit better, or taking on d7. It's a very tricky position, but f4, as you saw, was actually mentioned by an engine. It doesn't look, initially it didn't look from even an engine point of view as being that bad. Maybe this follow-up, this queen f3, is setting up a skewer though, which increases the possibility of a tactical disaster. If the queen was kept off the skewer line, this is another question here. So white should have been okay with, for example, well, would a queen e2 just falls to knight takes and taking the pawn? So something's got to be done to challenge this bishop that's hitting the pawn. Bishop c4 then ties down the bishop, and this should be okay for white. Bishop c4. Okay, so really it looks as though now queen f3 didn't help white too much, because of this tactical blow we're about to witness. This rook takes d2, stopping white castling, and tactically, you know, black has got the 2 bishops now, and he's winning pawns. And especially the dark square bishop is just very mean in this position, that dark square bishop. So the 2 bishops putting white on the precipice. And instead of bishop d5, which might allow bishop e4, although that looks like a miserable position, even more incisive move, g4 was played. So here white resigned. So a bit of an instructive game from the point of view of, you know, that even GMs can have opening disasters. So let's not be too hard on ourselves when it happens to us. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.